We are pleased to welcome you to this fourth session of this season webinars. Our guest today is Dr. Shaukat Hameed Khan, who is a fellow of the Pakistan Academy of Sciences and recipient of the President Medal on Technology. Dr. Shaukat Hameed Khan has been involved in research and development, teaching, and production. He retired as Coordinator General of COMSTECH in 2018. He has served as Rector of Ghulam Ishaq Khan Institute, Chief Scientist and DJ of PAEC, Member Planning Commission and Visiting Scientist at CERN. He has represented Pakistan at the summit of 100 scientists from EU and Asia in Japan 2010 to plan for Euro-Asian cooperation in large multinational programs. He authored the Vision 2030 National Foresight exercise in 2007 and the re-profile of the OIC countries in 2018. Dr. Khan will talk today about how green is renewable energy. Dr. Khan, please.
Sir, thank you very much. I'm grateful for this opportunity. And I ask for any apologies for any mistakes in advance. But renewable energy is part of this major energy transition going all over the world. And it's desirable, it is necessary, because we have to manage, adapt to, mitigate this climate change. And energy is one of the biggest sources, energy generation is one of the biggest sources of, let's say, changes to climate change. And I'll try and cover some aspects. Modern economies are built upon, can you see all this? Can you see this?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's okay. Thank you.
Built upon access to cheap carbon-based energy sources. And this is how the Industrial Revolution started. And everywhere the focus has been on affordability, availability, and security of energy sources now and in the future. But now there's a major rethink globally because of the potential climate chaos if greenhouse gases are not controlled or reduced. And because the major drivers of climate change are energy and consumption, so these are under scrutiny. And there are many scenarios and many possibilities, many projections. Global warming by 2100, likely range is 2 to 4.5. Best estimate maybe 3 degrees centigrade above normal. Very unlikely that we will meet the 1.5 degrees centigrade target. Might even go to 4.5 degrees plus if things are not managed properly. And what I want to point out here in this talk is that there's a lot of talk about climate change, and policies are so-called formulated, but actually on the ground, funny things are happening. Because energy policy is shaped by governments plus consumers, and here business comes in. And of course, technology shapes both the demand and the supply of energy. One major, sorry, I'll just get this out of the way. Yeah. Electrification of global economies and societies in the last 20 years, in fact, longer. While primary fuels and supplies grew by a factor of 2, electricity generation went up by a factor of 3.5. And the electricity demand is expected to further double by 2040. Fossil fuels, volatility. Should we go for coal, stick with oil and gas? What about their prices? What about war and the disturbances there? Can these be sustained? And there's a looming drawdown. Everybody agrees, look, we should cut down on this thing. And there is retreat from nuclear power in some countries and revival in others. Increasing policy focus is on energy efficiency. And with all this in the background, There is growth in renewable energy all the time, wind, solar, based on technology development and price reductions. The political factor, of course, is still there in the background. Competition for control of resources, which have major consequences for energy markets and trade. And you can see this with the Nord Stream gas pipeline to Germany and to Europe, with the Ukraine war and so on. Some quick numbers. I'll just take 5 or 6 issues I want to highlight. Of total energy production, CO2 emissions, and new investment trends in renewable energy. So we have the background with us. The strengths and weaknesses of renewable energy systems, I'm sure we all know this, but we must look at it in the entire life cycle. Falling costs and rising investments, sure, but all renewable energy systems have intermittent, they are intermittent, solar and wind, which is the biggest contributors, about 75–80% of renewable sources, intermittent in nature, variable, so they all need storage. And then land. We forget the land, and we forget the water used by different energy sources. And finally, an issue which is hushed up more or less, but is quietly coming to the forefront, emerging pollution and recycling issues in renewable energy. Because these plants that were set up 10 years, 20 years ago are reaching the end of their life, what happens to the waste? How will they be handled? What will it take to reach net zero emissions is still an open question. Here is a status of global CO2 emissions in gigatons, 1990 to 2021. From 20, they've gone up to about 34 here, 33, 34. Fell here in 19 because of pandemic. Basically, less traveling. For example, I'm not traveling to Jordan to give this talk. I'm doing it from my home. But carbon dioxide emissions are rising again, following the largest ever annual decline in 2020. And just a quick look at what's happening in the OIC countries. I have not been able to update this, but this is the data for 2015 and data for 2012, 2015. Indonesia's grew very high. There were very major investments in energy, coal, and what you call this thermal power and underground. Then Iran, all of them, always a slight increase. And this is the situation everywhere. Now, is renewable energy the inevitable long-term solution? Problem is, base load electric power, because of electrification of our economies and societies, comes only from fossil fuel and nuclear, 24 hours, 7 days a week. Hydro also is not always base load, because it is meant to store water. It is meant to store water, and when it comes, and in fact, hydropower, large hydropower plants have a life of 60 to 70 years. What do you do after that? Biofuels in large quantities will have a very serious impact on food crops, biodiesel, etc., etc. The renewable output is therefore, as to summarize, is variable, intrinsically, even intermittent, whether we talk in terms of seconds or minutes, days, seasons, and years. And this is the biggest challenge for integration with existing systems. Quick look at this as one of my favorite photographs or a diagram of solar farm variability in Arizona, USA, over a whole year. And the readings were taken every 10 seconds. So for some days are good, some days are bad. So when you had bad rain in Jordan, so you had a bad day somewhere like this. So in megawatt hours, this is how it varied in this solar plant in Arizona. What about wind? This is what happens to wind. Texas wind farm. It's again, and typical wind farm capacity or availability is just about 25, 26%. There is a North Sea, and you can see the variations, you see? And these are every monthly. So these are all something, they are not base load. They cannot give you 24-hour, 7-day electric power. So renewable energy needs large-scale storage technologies to cover peak demands, to improve the power quality, and for frequency regulation. Another issue Renewable energy requires special subsidies, feed-in tariffs or FITs. It is not indefinite. It doesn't like, look, it was started like this. It started like this in Spain and Germany, 5 years, feed-in tariffs, FITs, and they extended for another 4 or 5 years. And they said they can't give these subsidies. So what happened? This is a picture after 2016. You can see what happened in Germany fell. This is Italy. This is Spain, started falling earlier and so on. And one result of all this was, these are the cumulative annual growth rates during this period. So now it's down, it's really down now. This trend led to the sell-off of solar photovoltaic manufacturers in the EU. And a lot of them moved to China or were purchased by the Chinese. This is from Fraunhofer Institute of Solar Energy Systems in Germany. You can see a nameplate capacity for wind power can vary from 7 to 530 gigawatt hours during the year. And the share of all this wind and solar is still very small. And while the Germans promised to phase out nuclear power plant, they're having second thoughts now. And to make up for energy power deficits, they're importing electricity from France, which is nuclear powered, or Poland or Czechoslovakia and other places. So wind and solar is not enough to meet the demands. And this is from Heiner Flassbeck, who said the end of this energy or renewable energy, Germany will never be able to rely on renewable energy regardless of how much new capacity will be built. It is never going to be base load. He said this in 2017. Now, what about greenhouse gas emissions? Coal, yes, renewable energies have advantages. Biomass, co-firing, natural gas, biomass again, then solar photovoltaic, large-scale utility, roofs, geothermal, solar CSP, concentrated solar power like you have in Morocco, hydropower, nuclear, wind, onshore and offshore. Now, nuclear has about 1/4 the greenhouse gas emissions of solar photovoltaics. But it has other problems, and we'll discuss that. But then what about the levelized cost of energy generation, if you include the CO2 price? Again, from 2021, they can vary by a factor of 2. Small batteries, if you have, without this, the small units, then add a battery, cost more, large. This is the levelized cost includes operation, the capital costs, O&M costs, and replacements, all those factors. And now the price of carbon dioxide also included, utilities and gas turbines and so on. So they're all, this is what the renewable energy looks like, LCOE. Here's another way of looking at it. Solar from 147 to 221. And this is in dollars per megawatt. And this depends on where geographical location, mountainous, flat, desert or what, rooftops, community units, then solar photovoltaic, crystalline utility scale, solar thermal tower, this is the CSPs, geothermal, wind is very good, is the best. And of course, gas and nuclear is here. This is the, again, levelized cost of electricity generation, a gas combined cycle. What I'm trying to say is that there has been a very major drop in prices of renewable products. And this is why a lot of people are tempted to go in for it. But there's another thing to look at in the long term for planners and so on, energy return on energy invested. You need energy to make something, then you use it to do something. So with and without energy storage, normally this is since 2014-15, people have argued that we need a return on energy of at least a factor of 7. And that's a good minimum in terms of its life cycle. And solar photovoltaic is down to 4. And if you put energy storage, costs even more. You have to invest more on capital here, and so. And hydro and nuclear are the best, but they have their own problems. When coal is here, and so on. Now, What is the investment in the electricity sector during 2021? It was $820 billion investments. Renewable energy share was 70% based on technology growth and cost reductions. This 2021 report. And this is what it looks like. Upstream, oil and gas, fuel supplies, upstream, downstream, coal, low carbon fuels and so on, 1920 and the estimates for 2021. Renewable power growing up. This is the wind power, fossil fuel, nuclear, and sorry, this is all renewable, wind and solar. And here is, because of the demands of renewable power, there have to be changes, investments, improvements to the networks which transmit energy or to batteries which store them. So this is the sort of a spot picture of what's happening in the last year. And in terms of, again, global investment, 2011 to 15, it looked like this, 16 to 20 like this, estimated 2021. But if you want to meet the global climate change scenario, net zero by 2050, we have to reach here. The investments have to be 5 to 6 times higher. Even sustainable development goals, which are done a few years ago, in that scenario, again, we need about nearly 3 times more investments. So this is the issue. And this is in the OIC regions, the Central Asia and in the Eurasian area, in Middle East and North Africa, South Asia and Southeast Asia here, Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa. This is the installed capacity in 2021 of the various OIC countries. I can show you what's happening. If you're interested, I can show you those other countries also, some more detail. For example, the top 7 African countries, and Mozambique, Sudan, and so on, and hydro is here, and very little in bioenergy is a bit, solar energy only in Uganda, and South and Southeast Asia, hydro, solar, wind, and so on. Indonesia, a lot of geothermal. Malaysia, a lot of solar. By the way, Malaysia produces and has a market share of about 15 to 16% on all solar panels. And Bangladesh and Afghanistan, very little. Then, of course, this is in Turkey, Iran, this area. Turkey is the highest investment, not only renewable energy, not only hydro, but all of them. Iran has done well. Central Asia, not so good, except Kazakhstan. And here, Egypt, Morocco, and Jordan is here. And surprisingly, Jordan has a very major share of the solar energy production in the Middle East and North African countries. It's about 1,500 megawatts capacity in Jordan. Okay, I'll just come back to where we were. Now, storage is required everywhere. And this is the investments done, but battery is up at the top, and small amounts done, not much shade going to battery, but something is happening. This is what the view is of batteries. You want them in short durations or long durations? You want them higher powers, module size. At the moment, for high power, for long duration, only mature and commercial systems are lithium-ion batteries, advanced lead-acid batteries for medium storage, in this region, so on, pumped hydro and compressed air energy storage for bulk management. And this is where you need T&D, grid support, and all kind of flow batteries come in, nickel, cadmium, manganese hydride, flywheels, and so on. Afghanistan, by the way, holds 50% of the world's lithium reserves. And if I had Afghanistan, I'd never let it go. That explains why everybody wants to be in Afghanistan. Now, large-scale deployment, when you look at batteries, and one factor to look at, one metric, is energy stored and energy invested. Well, compare this with pumped hydro storage and compressed air. Lithium-ion is the best, gives you 10 times the return and sodium sulfide, vanadium redox batteries, zinc bromide, lead acid. And this is the formula. And at the moment, the result is that 93% of energy storage at the moment, out of total storage systems, which are chemical storage, excluding hydro and others, is based on lithium. And this is the demand for battery materials, because batteries mean battery materials. And lithium, cobalt, nickel, graphite, manganese, iron, phosphorus, aluminium, and copper. These are the demands are expected to grow by a factor of nearly 7 in the next 10 years. This is the data transition outlook from IRENA, World Energy Outlook. And this is lithium. And of course, this is copper, and this is aluminium. They are all part of the transmission system, distribution system. Among batteries, lead acid batteries, good for low, medium power, short periods. Lithium ion batteries, costly, limited lifespans. Lithium ion type is widely used for frequency regulation and range from several tens of megawatts. But levelized cost can be low as this. But the price has gone up by a factor of 5 in the last 2 years. Now, zinc air batteries, 3 times the energy density of lithium ion. Sodium sulfide, utility scale they provide, but they cost more. Nickel, again, cost varying from higher costs. And vanadium redox, wide range of power, tens of kilowatts to tens of megawatts, lifespan over 10 years. And the levelized cost is high. So costing matters, price matters. Now, critical materials for energy storage, they're crucial for technology development, lithium and nickel for rechargeable batteries, neodymium and dysprosium for permanent magnets used in wind turbines and electric vehicles. Essential. Problem, most of these materials, these renewable energy materials, the critical elements, are difficult to extract and mine and recover. Very few countries have deposits. Quality is declining, large price fluctuations, but there are other materials like aluminium for transmission and batteries, cobalt for EV batteries, chromium, gallium, germanium, carbon, graphite for which is crystalline carbon for the lithium batteries, all of them. European Raw Materials Alliance has been set up recently as a special legislation for 30 critical materials, which they will support, the governments will support. The USA has a list of 35 critical materials. So if you have any of these materials in your country, watch out. Be careful who comes to mine them, whether they're taken away or not. And the price increase in 2021 only was lithium 500%, cobalt 120, neodymium 80%, nickel 35, copper 30. But nuclear, yes, there's a drawdown in some countries, but new reactors are coming up. This is the profile of reactors in operation at the moment. Sorry, I mixed up the scale. There are 51 reactors, is the reactor age in years. And normally after about 30 years, they should, this should be here, they should retire. But then most of them are reconditioned and asked to go on. And very few new ones. And this is what happened after Fukushima. Fukushima happened after here, nothing for some time, slowly coming back. Rollback of nuclear power after Fukushima, but new startup 54, including Japan. And Pakistan has a target of 40,000 megawatts by 2050. We're having about 7-8 megawatts at the moment. 8,000 megawatts. But there is a problem with renewables, nuclear. No country is ready for long-term safe disposal of high-level waste. In 2014, the Blue Ribbon Commission set up by the Obama administration estimates for global decommissioning was $250 billion only for the USA. Now, where are the nuclear wastes? They have long duration, have hundreds of thousands of years of life. Where are they sent to? Where does France send its nuclear waste? Algeria? Yes. Somalia? Yes. The Pacific Islands? Yes. Hawaii and so on. And have a very serious impact our environment. And we should all raise our voices about what France has done quietly. And in the case of Somalia, the fish were destroyed and they had to turn to piracy, the Somalis, the poor Somalis. So there's a very, and here in the case of the Blue River Commission, they had set up these, they collect them, they dispose the waste, come out with the spent fuel, put them in cans, put them in storage, put them in special containers of concrete and so on, put them under the ground. Then what happens? There can be earthquakes, there can be water seepage. And they've observed this in the USA. So there is a problem. And this is, so now new reactors are being designed, small modular reactors. And maybe if there's a fast breeder reactor comes along, then of course you can use the spent fuel to thorium based and so on. But that is still, people are waiting for it for the last 40 years. Okay. Everything requires land. So does solar renewable energy. Photovoltaics 1 to 20 megawatts, 8 megawatts typically per megawatt of AC out. Fixed axis is less, movable axis takes more. Large photovoltaics, I'll just take the case of only photovoltaics, average 7.9, fixed 7.5, movable 8, one axis only 8.3, CSP 10, parabolic trough 9.5, tower 10. Now the total area of the Earth surface is 36.7 billion acres. 12 is desert, 8.8 is mountainous, 15.8 billion only is renewable, is arable land for agriculture. And mountainous and agriculture, some of them, both of them also include forests and trees. The global solar power capacity, new addition in 2021, was 707,000 megawatts. Sorry, capacity was 707,000 and new addition was 127,000 megawatts. Comes to 5.9 million acres were taken up. And this is the land required for solar plants. And if you look at for in terms of scale, then concentrated solar power is here, large wind is here, wind requires a little more, and then here is all this. You know, you can see because the wind variability is very high. And solar water heaters, flat plate evacuator tube requires 774 acres per megawatt. And these are here acres per megawatt. So don't forget the land they'll take. And what about the water? There's a very close energy water nexus. Natural gas is the best. Tar sand, shale oil, hydrogen production, LNGs, biodiesel 181 to nearly 1 million liters to produce 1,000 units of electricity, 1,000 kilowatt hours. Hydrofracking, 10 to 15 fracks per well, minimum 100,000 cubic meters or 26 million gallons. And what now, let's summarize. Wind requires the least water for electricity generation. Solar photovoltaic depends on the location and how much power there is. Solar CSP, of course, again the same. Geothermal here depends on various factors. Combined cycle gas turbine, the classical, the conventional power turbine, good at the best. Then gas, here, then gas with carbon capture and storage, take more water. And then coal with integrated with gas, combined cycle plant, fossil steam, all this. Nuclear is here. And then this is all part of cooling. Cooling required, they all require to be cooled. And cooling ponds, if there's cooling pond, sent back, recycled, then of course it becomes different, the scales are different. And once through and out, then you throw water out and much more power, much more water is required. Water for cleaning solar energy system, you leave your car out, and after at least maximum 2 days, you have to clean the screen and so on. So generally, the solar energy systems are located in arid and semi-arid or desert regions, high rates of dust deposition, condensation at night, reduces energy yields. And best cleaning method is water plus detergent. And I've seen in one Middle East country, I won't mention it, large water tankers, they spray deionized water on utility scale solar panels and mirrors. And it just falls down into the desert, onto the floor, onto the soil. Labor and energy intensive, higher operating costs. There's no attempt at even conserving and recovering the cleaning water from the soil. But then you have to change the design slightly of the solar panel so that there's a little channel so the water can come down, you can collect it. And most recent plants in Middle East, North Africa, Kuwaiti, 50 megawatt Shagaya CSP plant, 50 million liters per year. Abu Dhabi, 100 megawatt Shams 1 was 20 million liters a year. Morocco, Noor 1, 37 million. They're right next to the sea, so they can desalinate the seawater. But then how far can you go with such power plants? How much desalination will you do? But there's a very interesting solution to climate change, and I want to highlight this aspect: carbon trading. They introduced, the businesses and others and the governments introduced a financial incentive to curb emissions. They said, buy and sell your pollution. They said, set specific limit emissions for a company. You can't have more than so many tons, and put a carbon tax on the company. Companies pays for the amount of CO2 it produces, but the companies are encouraged and allowed to go for an emission trading scheme. It can sell its theoretical emissions for real money, a carbon market. Basically, the companies buy and sell the right to pollute. Complete failure in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, many scandals. The Kyoto Protocol, European Union Emissions and Trading Scheme have resulted in a net increase in emissions, not reduction. And some of the world's worst polluters have raked in massive profits. The Guardian newspaper in 2008 exposed the French scandal of several billion euros, how they were using forests in Africa and in Central America, French Guiana and others, to say that they have selling they are allowed, they can do that, but they buy because their country with its forests has so little CO2, it can sell off carbon. But it doesn't really happen like that. Anyway, three other classic examples, recent ones. Sorry, this should be 2019, not 2109. Google in 2019, 12.5 million tons of emissions were traded. They said they had eliminated the entire carbon legacy by purchasing high quality offset. They purchased high quality offsets and nobody checked whether they actually reduced their emissions or not. Same with Nestle, 113 million tons, carbon neutral, and same with Total oil company. So I'm coming now to the close now very soon. Institute of Energy Research says green technologies have caused massive waste and pollution. And we are now, either we accept massive growth of waste and pollution at end of life, landfills, EV, electric vehicle batteries, 5-year lifetime, solar panels, 10 to 12. They claim 2025, but no, if you buy from somebody, he will not give you a guarantee of more than 10. Wind turbines, batteries, solar panels, high cost, hazardous materials, wind blades, battery disposals. In 2025, 780,000 tons from retired batteries alone are expected, according to the Beijing Institute of Technology. An example, small 20-gram cell used in our cell phones, the cell battery, more than 500 grams per cubic meter, put it in a, can cause manganese poisoning. It can pollute 3 standard swimming pools of water. If abandoned on land, 1 square kilometer polluted for 50 years. Same with EV batteries, they all have a problem, and especially lithium fires, explosion, etc. So solar industry cannot be clean if it leaves a trail of hazardous waste. I'll just move quickly. But some good news. First recent attempt in 2021, recycled silicon used to produce PERC solar cells with 19.7% efficiency. The old ones are broken up, scrap, taken out, then some wet chemical etching was also used, and some recovery. And although not as good as 22.2%, it's a start. So wind turbine decommissioning is the same problem. You don't remove their foundations, which are as deep as 15 feet. But what do? Everywhere you read, they say they can be recycled or we can sell them to a wind farm in Asia or in Africa. USA alone will have more than 20,000 tons of blade material to dispose of. 720,000 tons in the next 20 years. This does not include newer, taller, higher capacity wind turbines. So conclusion is very few countries have policies for decommissioning of green technology products. Including the cost of recycling can increase the lifetime cost of a green technology, as the Harvard Business Review concluded recently for solar cells. But you've seen these all. I'll just show you this. Manure from cattle, we've got about, Pakistan has something like 5 million plus cattle. So a small plants, small farm, 144 heads of cattle, biogas plants, digester sizes, you can get heat plus electricity. Costs, this figure for 2018, internal rates of return as high as 42%, payback period in 2 to 3 years. And this is what is happening. And I'll just, stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank
Any
you,
questions?
Thank you very much, Dr. Shaukat, for this very interesting seminar presentation of information that is really vital for decision makers in this regard. Now I open the floor for the participants to have a comment or ask questions.
Please, most welcome.
Man.
Dr. Azhar, please. Dr. Azhar, you are muted.
Dr. Adnan Badran.
Thank you.
Dr. Adnan, please.
Yes, I start with the basic principle was that we should not increase the temperature beyond 1.5 degrees at the end of the century.
That is the projected target.
Yes, no, but the thing is, at the moment, things are that we will have this 1.5 degrees in the next 10 or 15 years. That other things are going, in the 30s, we will be having just 1.5 degrees, and by the 50s, we may even go beyond 2 degrees. What do you think about that?
I think we will not meet the 1.5 degrees centigrade target because the biggest polluters have not changed their game. You know, carbon trading allowed them to look good, but it hasn't happened. And by the way, just one question. I'm repeating a question posed by a Nobel laureate in 2017. I forget his name. And he said, can you believe it? This huge planet that we live in, they can measure the temperature down to 1/10 of a degree centigrade of the whole planet. Climate extremes will happen, have happened in the past also. It is cyclical. Now, but what is really required basically is consumption to be reduced. There's no other way out. I mean, I used to travel on bicycles when I was in school. Now I haven't ridden, I don't have a bicycle. I had one, my wife threw it away because you don't use it. Now, we have to change our lifestyles. Why? I'll give you an example of COMSTECH at the building headquarters. I went there, our electricity bill was very high for air conditioning. They had these doors, the doors had little slats at the bottom, you know. So from the room, it went out into the corridors. And I said, hold on, it's leaking all the time. So I shut, and they also had these, on the corridor floors, they had these things and the cold air coming down. And then the temperature was set for 21, 22 degrees centigrade. I said, why do I have to wear a jacket or a tie when I'm working? So I raised it to 24 degrees centigrade, 25 degrees. We saved more than 33% of our electricity bill. Simple. In Japan, they make it 26 degrees centigrade, and ties and jackets are not recommended, are looked down upon. Save your electricity.
I think what you're saying is a problem. It's a problem of what I call the inertial indifference. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to solve this problem. You ask people, you be careful. They don't increase the temperature. They said, but we don't really care because we have the energy. They don't think what would happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
This is a problem. What did you think?
Yeah. I think, well, now just imagine what's happening in Germany now with the Russian gas likely to be stopped.
But
we have to wake up to the coal is going to last about 60 years. Oil and gas 30 years. That's all. Now these were the things we loved. What do we do after that? And solar and wind cannot supply our needs. So we have to change our lifestyles. There's the only way out. And we have to change our houses. In the old days, we used to have slightly higher roofs, and there were these little windows or something which you'd open, and the hot heat inside would go out. Now, for example, in my home here in Islamabad, in the evenings, I open the bedroom windows, and on the second floor, I have an exhaust fan, goes out, and many of the times, when the temperature is about 20, 22, it comes in, cools the house, cools the home from cool air comes in from outside. I don't need air conditioning in many places. And in the morning, nice cool home. So we have to come back to our traditional, for example, Jordan, all the Middle East areas. They had their own traditional housings. This has to maybe come back now. Come back to that.
And this is a very good principle, but do we have the means to do that?
It's a matter of intentions only.
No, but that's not enough.
Well, I think future will lie with our children and grandchildren, and I think they are much more savvy, much more careful than we are, and I pin my hopes with them.
Yeah, all the another problem I want to talk about the intermittence of the new energy. Now you talk about the batteries. How about the hydrogen as a storing element?
There's been a lot of investment in hydrogen, and people are talking about the hydrogen economy, the hydrogen storage, but it's still expensive, number one. Also, when it comes to hydrogen, how is hydrogen stored, by the way? Where is it stored? Compressed, right? Most of the time. Talk of hydrogen fuel for vehicles. I wouldn't trust hydrogen. It's very inflammable. I'll be scared to put hydrogen in my vehicle. So this is one thing one has to be careful about.
Are you saying that hydrogen is not a good element? The only best way to have a stable base is the nuclear energy.
That provides base load. Big hydropower plants provide base load and give you 24/7 availability. Hydrogen is a little dodgy, and I'll be scared to put. I'll be honest. I don't want to put hydrogen in my car. I don't want to go to a filling station with hydrogen being pumped.
Then what's the best way to overcome this intermittence?
There is none. There is a lot of research going on. There's a lot of research going on, and battery storage in terms of is only the investment is hardly about 7-8% on the total energy investments in the last 2-3 years. And this has to change. But I'm putting up a solar plant, solar thing on my roof, and I'm scared of the lithium-ion batteries they want to bring in. They want to put it inside the home. Why? Why? Because it's hot outside. I don't want an explosion in my house. So I'm having a lot of arguments with them. So these are things we have to live with. There is no easy way out. There's another way. And I think, I'm sorry, I took away a slide. Renewable, the fossil fuels are also seeing a sort of a makeover and interests in efficiency increase. And most Conventional coal-fired plants, 35 to 40% conversion efficiency. Now, gas turbines can in the 50s, but now with supercritical and ultra supercritical, you can go to as high as much more than 60%. Basically, the higher the temperature, the higher the pressure, the conversion is greater. Then you can have a lot of scrubbing at the top for any emissions coming out. So if that is part of the system built in, when it's being built, there is a way out. And the carbon coming out, etc., the soot from carbon can be reused to make coal briquettes, etc. A lot of little things can happen. But then this is a circular economy, which has to emerge in renewable energy. And it's possible.
All the best. All the best. Let's have future. Thank you very much.
Dr. Adnan, please.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Abdullah. I have enjoyed very much indeed Professor Dr. Shaukat Hameed Khan's lecture. Really, it was very comprehensive. And I would like to suggest that if it be possible, Dr. Abdullah, to be presented to the IAS annual conference, whether in Rabat or in Karachi. This is very comprehensive lecture.
Yeah, Dr. Adnan, as a matter of fact, as I was talking to Dr. Shaukat before you joined the meeting about this, and he promised to join the Karachi conference.
Yeah, very good. My question here to Dr. Shaukat, really, concerning our parts of the world in Middle East. Most Middle East is a desert country. Number one nation now is advancing in solar and wind energy is Morocco. Morocco is trying to develop a system with the desert they have with photovoltaic and also the CP system to really export electricity power to Europe because of its proximity. Now in Jordan, I want to just put the difficulties we face scientifically, and we haven't found a solution to it. Jordan right now participates in the energy system about 20% renewable. 20% renewable from photovoltaic and also from wind energy. So we have in the desert now solar farms and wind farms. The problem here really is storage. In other words, I feel myself, if you don't have the capacity of storage, renewable energy doesn't work. We have so many problems in Jordan with the electrical companies. They are resisting even to increase the participation of renewable in their grid system. They found it easier with the fuel, fossil fuel, and they gain more profit from fossil fuel than renewable because of intermittent system. In other words, they don't have the capacity of storage. They end up really in those years, particularly in winter, during the night, that their grid system does not have the capacity to operate more than 20% mix from renewable energy. This is one problem. The second problem is the grid system itself. The grid system does not absorb what I call a high production, but not permanent one, for a few hours or for one day, does not really, this intermittency doesn't work with their grid system. Therefore, last week, we have a new energy tax law, renewable energy tax, that when you put solar energy in your roof or wind energy, you have to pay every month about, let's say, I'm trying to think, to JD, $3 per 1 kilowatt production. For example, in my house, I have 20 kilowatt photovoltaic. I have to pay every month from now on $30 for storing because we run on net metering system for storing the electricity I produce from solar, storing it in the national grid. So every kilowatt now capacity production.
You are paid $3 or you have to give $3?
Yeah, we pay fees whether you use it or not. We from now on every. By the way, the production of roofing from residents is increasing now with 850 megawatts. By the way, we reach a very high level, Dr. Shaukat. We have reached very high level. People are eager. For example, our HQ, the headquarters of our academy, we put on the roof photovoltaic solar system. I think probably Dr. Abdullah will tell you, it's about 40 or 45 kilowatt. 45 kilowatt. Now our headquarters, whether he uses electricity or he doesn't use, we have to pay 45 multiplied by $3 every month. This is for storing fees for renewable energy on the grid system.
But does the grid system have a storage scheme? Do they have storage in the grid system?
Pardon me?
Does the grid system have storage?
No.
Yeah. No, we don't have storage system.
Not in
Jordan,
the grid.
Our storing system, Dr. Shaukat, is the grid. Is the grid. Whatever you produce, once you install on your roof, photovoltaic cells, panels, and mostly manufactured in China, by the way. And you produce renewable energy, all the renewable energy will go to the grid by net metering. And the utilization of your electricity will come from the grid. The difference of that you pay. If the electrical company gained more, they don't pay. But if you take from the grid system more than you produce, then you have to pay. So it's not, I would say, a fair system, because you have, this is something you have to think about, Shaukat. There's those electric companies in developing countries, they get used to the fossil fuel and they don't want to change. Any change will cost them money. And this is why they resist renewables. In the Middle East, the most resistant of renewables is coming from those giant electric companies who owns all the grid system in the country. So this is one. The last question about the carbon. Really, probably this is the solution for the future when we talk about climate change. The carbon market. But how could the carbon market be implemented? Now, coal, as you know, is the biggest emittent of CO2. And the United States, China, and India. Now Russia is going to export coal to India because of their blockade of importing coal to Europe from Russia. So we are going to have increase in CO2. So the problem here really how to deal with those highly populated and giant countries of the carbon market. In other words, the carbon market is a solution. How much you pollute, you pay. How much you less to pollute, you save. That's the answer, by the way. This is Kyoto and Paris Agreement.
But there is a problem. The people who pollute, they buy the so-called carbon credits in third world countries, developing countries like ours, and then they keep on polluting, and they just like it's like having a little check or something. You got I'm doing this. I've got this forest I'm supporting. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. But they're not reducing their emissions. That is the problem.
Yeah.
With carbon credits. Yeah. And you're right about net metering. I agree with you. So basically it's a serious problem, and I have no answers. You've given some answers.
Well, I'm Dr. Shaukat, I'm laying the problem for you. So you and I will scratch our heads before our next conference. Probably by that time we'll have an answer.
I will lose my hair. I will lose my hair before I have the answer.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Any more questions?
I think we are finishing on a hopeless point, that things are hopeless. You know, if they are really hopeless, you know, then it's not very good. We have to move on. We have no choice, absolutely no choice. You cannot live being hopeless. It's going to be a big problem.
Professor Abdullah, I have a question, please.
Yeah, please go ahead, Dr. Shanshan.
Professor Abdullah, Professor Shaukat, people are talking a lot about graphene technology. And graphene seems, if this is true, seems to be a possible solution for the energy storage problems.
Well, yes, graphene can be used as electrode material, etc., smaller sizes, smaller batteries, safer batteries, but it has not gone beyond the laboratory scale at the moment. I hope it works out. But at the moment, if you wanted to buy a commercial thing, it's not available.
Not at all. Not at all, I mean.
Yeah, really. It's basically hasn't left the labs or trials in the labs.
I mean, if this is true, what are reported about graphene, this will be an immense solution for the problem. Because
it can be.
You have a carbon monolayer, which is very thin on the atomic level, and it has an immense capacity of energy storage.
You are very right. Great capacity, smaller battery size, or therefore, or in the same battery size, you can have more storage, certainly. But let's hope and pray, and this, I hope this is on the positive side, something will come out, like recycling of solar panels. It's going to be a huge problem. But they've started doing something about this in the Fraunhofer Institute, and some good results have come out. So same here. There is in major investments scientifically in renewable batteries. And about water saving, I forget, but there was somebody, I think it was in Morocco or Algeria, and they're making some coatings on these glass panels, which are electrostatic, and they can repel the dust formation and reduce the water use by a factor of nearly 4 or 5 to clean the panels. So things are happening, and human beings are innovative, so they will always try. Give them a problem, there'll be a solution at the end. But there is one little thing which has to matter. Now, I will not tell you my age, but when I was born, only 2 billion people had ever lived on this earth before me. 2 billion only. from the start of time until my birth. Now we are approaching 8 billion. So that also is a form of how long can this continue? How much water will we have? Where will the water come from? Where will be the land for agriculture come from? How much land productivity you can increase? And I may just mention here, one of my colleagues, my original field is lasers, and the PAEC is the Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission. And then Butt Saab, of course, one of my seniors, my mentors, Dr. Butt. And one of my colleagues was we did research, teaching, and production in the same place. We've done about $28 billion of production. We've got our own designed lasers are installed in CERN. They had a problem, we solved it. 40 systems are installed there. But what I'm very proud of is a small thing called the laser land leveler. It saves 30% of the water use on our farmlands. Instead of taking it out of the tube well, out of the river, and just flooding the land, you level the land, the laser beam starts spinning, there's a tractor, then there's an automatic, let's say, scraper at the back, and depending on where the laser beam hits your sensor, either it cuts the land or fills it up, and 30% of the water is saved, and 18 to 20% higher yield also. So it is about 5,000 have been sold in the country.
Any more questions? Dr. Nurbat, please. You are muted, Dr. Nur.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm sorry I was late. I had another meeting, and I enjoyed the last moments of the Dr. Shaukat's eminent talk. I have one or two comments on cleaning the solar panels. As has been mentioned, that dust-free mirrors are available through Nano. Already for some years earlier, in cars, Japan is using the dust-free mirrors. So that technology is for solar cleaning, automatically dust repelling is helping, as has been mentioned by him. The second thing is, I forgot actually, recently the batteries have been commercially produced with long life and usable for cars even. Somebody in the United States, I think some Pakistani, I forgot, some days earlier I read about it, that they've commercialized the solar batteries of usable in the cars and so on. I don't know, Dr. Shaukat might be up to date about it.
I've read about it, I've heard about it. I'm not sure, but let's hope these things come out. Let's hope they are. And every time I would like to stress one thing, the lifetime costs, the lifetime penalties that we have to pay or not to pay. And everything is important at the end of the life of the product. How do you dispose of a battery? I mentioned that. Serious problem. And it's not just dry. You can put it into a landfill, but then it pollutes the soil.
Yeah.
We always use where you need wet processes to clean it up, take out the required material. But so there's a long way to go. And I think there's nothing like the old handpan, used to happen in the past.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
I think we are finishing off this talk in a way that things are not going to be very bright in the future. This is not a good sign. I hope we can use a matrix of energies where the intermittents would be included, and you don't have to store them anyway. So you use the matrix of these energies like nuclear or hydro, whatever you want. So they will avoid finding means of storing these energies. Probably this is the best way to go, to have a matrix of energies which includes the intermittents.
Sure.
Any more comments or questions? If
Well,
not,
I think there is a lot of work, investment in increasing the storage time for the batteries. And in
Sure.
China, for example, one of my students is working on the life of the batteries of all types. But hybrid using is okay, but I think there's one has to hope for the better. Technology is improving day by day, and one has to be optimistic about the utilization of energy and research for the practical purposes.
Sure.
Maybe sometime the optimism is misplaced, so we end up in the end without nothing.
You see,
But mostly it works.
You see, I actually,
What percentage is a failure and what percentage is success?
I think we've become very serious. Have you heard about the fourth law of Newton?
Yes, we have studied in the school.
The fourth law.
Yes.
The first three are taught, the fourth law is not taught.
Yes.
I experience it every day. And I'll give you an example. This also relates to renewable energy. The number of cars in Islamabad is horrendous. It's terrible. The public transport has disappeared. And so now you find people, one person or two people in a car traveling. So every time I change my lane to when I reach a traffic light, Newton's fourth law applies to me. That is the lane which slows down even more. So I'm saying that although we are in the sometimes affected by the fourth law of Newton, but the traffic lights are still working. And it's good to have a traffic light which tells you, hold on, stop, review, think again, and come back again. And so things will happen. Human beings are very innovative.
But this is happening everywhere.
Everywhere.
You know, this is happening everywhere. And this public transport has almost completely disappeared.
Yes.
Any more questions or comments? Dr. Shaukat, you're concerned about the hydrogen storage of energy. How? Apparently, it is because of the risk associated with this, right?
Yeah.
How it is compared with the risk with other sources of energy like nuclear or others?
Well, nobody's had a nuclear explosion so far. But all the time, even with petrol and diesel and so on, we hear about a small fire in a petrol pump. Somebody was careful, not very careful about his cigarette and so on. But hydrogen is very inflammable. And small amounts coming out when you're feeding it into your car, the gasket is leaking a little bit. Where do you store it under pressure? You know, how do you carry it on the road with tankers or what? Will you lay a special pipeline for it in the city to travel to one? So it's horrendous problems.
Could be used in the industry only, not in domestic settings. Even
for industry, I think there are other ways to do this. But why hydrogen? Does it give you more output? It forms water, we know that, and it doesn't give you carbon dioxide. Very true. But carbon dioxide also, there are a lot of mitigation strategies for carbon dioxide. And but overall, then in the end, really, we have to cut down on our consumption. Cut down on our consumption, and it matters. Cut down on the pollution which it causes. Plastics. There was an article in the magazine Nature last month. For the first time, they've detected microplastics in the human body, in the brain, in our bloodstreams. Yeah. And this has never happened. And then another thing we have to worry about is this electronic waste, which is a bigger problem, the solar energy waste is a subset of this. Why do they export them to third countries? The Basel Convention says, no, it can't be done. They have a tracking system now. You know, and there was a very major affair about a year ago, last year, when Malaysia received huge consignments from Canada of electronic waste. And the litigation going on between the two countries. So this is happening all the time. And Pakistan is guilty of receiving such electronic waste. So is India. In fact, India receives far more. And the poisoning of the soil, the mercury poisoning in India in certain parts in the south are unbelievable. So these are, and these countries, rich countries, don't keep their own waste.
But they make money.
They make money. They make money. As I said, to put it into a landfill is $1, to recycle is $20. Send it to another country and it costs you less than even $1. For it to be recycled, there you get paid for it, in fact. Costs you nothing.
Yeah, with regard to the carbon trade, Dr. Shaukat, in the last meeting in Glasgow, the COP26, they said that they established a company who deals with the carbon trade. And the company will operate under the auspices of the United Nations, IPCC. Only few countries can purchase the carbon right, and the money, the revenue, will be diverted to development programs where the nature or the ecosystem will be conserved or preserved. That's the whole idea behind carbon trade right now, as it is emanated from the COP27 in Glasgow.
It hasn't really changed. It's just different words to do the same thing. Your dirty things you sell off, give to other countries, and oh, you'll get money and we'll go build development. The loss and the damage it will cause will be far worse, far longer than what this. So everybody should deal with their own waste, their own pollution. Honestly, no matter what you do, you can't manage it. Now, for the United Nations can talk about everything. Let me, if you want to be political, they talk about the International Court of Justice for crimes against humanity, but nobody will talk about what's happening in Palestine or Kashmir. So, what happened in Iraq or Syria? I mean, Iraq destroyed for nothing. Syria.
Any more questions?
No, I just wanted to say something about the carbon that is in the atmosphere. At the moment, the concentration of carbon dioxide is approaching 418 ppm. And if it continues like that, if we reach 1,000, that's the limit of annihilation. You know,
right.
So we are approaching quite fast to that dreadful point. So, you know, I really don't know how to go about this unless something miracle happens. You know, miracles are not every day, and even it's very difficult now. So the situation is really not very pleasant at the moment, especially the geopolitics are disturbing the whole thing completely. So I don't know how to cure this sickness of geopolitics, which are creating tremendous amount of problems.
Geopolitics, my favorite American was that, what was his name? Forget his name, Rockefeller, and who said, it is not the ownership of energy resources that matter. It is the control of the path, of the route through which energy is transferred, whether it's a pipeline or whether it's a transmission line, and that gives you control over both the source and the user. But let me ask a question to which I don't have an answer, and I leave it with everybody before you close, Dr. And that is, I understand that most of the pollution is in the northern hemisphere. right?
You're right.
Okay. Number two, why then is Antarctica suffering?
Because Antarctica is a part of the Earth.
It is part of the Earth, but the winds in the northern and southern hemispheres, when they go around the Earth, when the Earth rotates, I'm told they don't mix.
The winds are changing also. Winds are changing also. The topology of winds are changing also due to the climate change. So that's the problem, you know. Because of that, you know, even the desertification is increasing in different places of Earth.
Sure.
Because the wind distribution of winds is changing also. So that also affects the Antarctic.
Okay, thank you.
Any more comments? Okay, if not, then we would like to sign off and say that we hope that we can see you again, maybe in 1 month on our 5th session of this webinar series.
And